Come on in, bestie. Welcome to Story Pod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Hello, thank you for joining me for another podcast. This is Story Pod. I am Ashley. You are Bestie. And I have one of my favorite things to do today, which is answering a story question with my thoughts and my opinions of how the problem presented in the question may be solved. And ideally, I would love to answer your question. So if you have a story conundrum that you're dealing with, please let me know. There will be contact information below wherever you're watching this. And in the meantime, let's get to this question from the r/character development subreddit. The poster is illustrious ad 4478. They're asking about whether they should let their character see color earlier than they planned in the story. So the character right now can only see in black and white, with everything smelling, tasting bland, and can only feel the most extreme physical feeling because of a magical mask she is state mandated to wear at all times from the beginning of birth. So originally I was thinking of having her take off the mask later in the story, but since I'm having her go through the astral plane, I don't know if I should let her be able to see a lot of colors, or just a little bit, or none at all. Because the astral plane is a realm of magic and thoughts, being the space between spaces, with only living or magical items and creatures being able to exist and move around there. So I don't know if the mask would cancel out the magical world, or would the magical world overwhelm the mask? Okay, so interesting question. And so we're gonna do our best to give our thoughts based on minimal information about the world building and things like that, because the world building can often answer the question kind of because we just follow the logic of the world, and that will determine the question, as well as the goal and the plot, and basically where you're planning on taking the story can usually answer a question like this, because you want to do what's best for the story that you want to tell. So a lot of it is going to depend on your goal and the story you want to tell for this character and for this world, whether it should be done earlier or whether it should be done later. It's going to tie into the particular character arc you have her going on, the journey that she's going on, whether it would be best for her to take it off earlier or later. But depending on when you have her first going through the astral realm, I personally like the idea, and this is my opinion, of as she's, and it also depends on if she's going physically through the astral realm, or if it is in her thoughts and in her mind, or is just a part of her spirit or her consciousness going through the astral realm versus her whole physical body. And if it is just a bit of her consciousness that goes, some intangible part of who she is goes through the astral realm, would the mask that she's wearing reach into that, or would it be inconsequential? Would it no longer apply? So assuming, based on the question, that you're having her go physically through the astral realm, the option that I tend to like the best is that she's wearing the mask, but the magical astral realm overpowers and cancels out the abilities of the mask. And that could be the first time that she sees color, and she's kind of having her Alice in Wonderland type of moment, because you're saying that it's okay, well, it says living or magical items and creatures being able to exist and move around there. So I was taking it like, oh, there's probably some wild creatures and stuff there that she doesn't see in her regular world, which may very well be the case. But it does seem that you can also have regular living things and stuff moving through that realm. So it could be a very touching and beautiful story moment where, in whatever way you have her first traveling through the astral realm, she is wearing the mask and she's expecting it to be whatever, the same, but she's able to see color. She's able to see things that she hasn't seen before, and she's in awe. And maybe she takes the mask off and there's no change, and it's just now like a lump of metal, wood, whatever it's made out of, that no longer is functioning in this realm. And then it could be nice to see the juxtaposition of when she goes back, or maybe she doesn't even take off the mask, but when she goes back into the regular world and she's shocked back into the black and white of the world. That could be a very interesting emotional beat for this character. That could also be the moment that she decides to rebel against the state mandate and take off her mask. Now, whether it should happen earlier in the story or later in the story is really going to depend on what serves your narrative the best. Is there a compelling reason for her to keep the mask on once she's back in the regular world? Is it an issue of her safety? Is it an issue of her own emotional state? Is it scary for her to see the world in color and to feel things? Because, it might even be interesting. Okay, here we go. We're brainstorming now. So when she goes through the astral realm, perhaps the first sensation is that everything is just in color and it's shocking to her. And then when she takes off the mask, there's a rush of all of her senses being basically assaulted with vibrancy and odors and perfumes and, of course, the color. And she's feeling the astral grass under her feet, and she's feeling the breeze, and she's no longer isolated in this world of bland gray, black and white, no feelings, being almost like an automaton. And you can have some very interesting reasons for why the state mandates that. And it's, of course, this is going to also be like, what's going to happen in this story? What's the purpose of this? What is she going to do? Is the purpose ultimately for her to destroy the state and bring life basically back to the world, the regular world? But that can be a very emotional moment. And then she has this moment of, as she's experiencing this rush of sensory information, she starts to cry, but she doesn't realize what that is, what that means. What's happening? Why am I feeling all of this? And the tear comes down her face and she's like, what's this wetness on my face? And then she realizes she's crying and she begins to sob, which is something that she's never done before. So this can be a very impactful moment for both the character and the audience, the way you play that moment of her going through the astral plane and experiencing that. And then when she realizes that experience is not limited to the astral plane, because you could even, depending on the pace of your story and again your narrative, you could even have it be where if she has the ability, if she has agency over how and when she can go into the astral plane, perhaps that becomes an escape for her. And that's where she's able to go and experience and enjoy really living and really having these moments with all of her senses intact. And then she goes back into the regular world and she's, back to that blandness and things like that. But then when she realizes that the regular world is like the astral plane too, in the sense of there is, color, there's smell, there's taste, there's feeling things beyond just the most extreme feeling, there's love and all of these things, right? So, and then that could be one aspect of what drives her towards the story goal, if the story goal is something like returning life to the world, eliminating the state mandated whatever. And there could also be a very interesting kind of gray area where the state is not necessarily black and white. They maybe had a great reason in their minds for doing this. Because, for example, here's an example of why they might have decided to do that however many generations ago, which is we are coming out of a time of war. This might be cliched. This might be too simple. We're coming out of a time of war. And what we realize is that humans having too much sensory input, emotions, feelings, having too many experiences, having desires that can be destructive is what caused us to go to war. So the best way to preserve our future generations is to use this technology, whether it's magical or actually just tech, to basically deaden their experience of the world, basically. And that will keep them in line, keep them in control. It will keep their emotions in check. They won't be driven by physical-based desires. And also that allows the state to have a lot of control over the people. So there could be a good reason for them having done that. And so perhaps if she achieves the goal, yes, it brings life back to the world, but yes, it also brings either the possibility of destruction or destruction to the world. So that could be very interesting, an interesting little kink in what looks like a noble goal, but it actually ends up bringing harm a little bit. So that would be my thought. It's gonna really depend on the pace of your story, the narrative that you're telling, the goals that you have both within the story as well as your own goal as an author of what you're trying to tell. So as you look at those things, where you want to go, how you're telling the story, that will, I think, ultimately determine the best time for her to take her mask off and get down to business. So those are my thoughts, though, bestie. We're opening the floor to you. What do you think? Based on the information that we have here, or just whatever brainstorming ideas you may have been coming up with based on the paragraph that the author provided, what do you think? Do you think it should happen earlier, or do you think it should happen later? Why do you think that? What is making you come to that conclusion for the story? I would love to hear it. Let's chat below and have a beautiful day.